everybody. Welcome to the Road to Rings of Power, where Taylor and I are going to be talking about the Lord of the Rings movies as we get ready to watch the Rings of Power coming out pretty soon. I'm Kaitlyn from Tea with Tolkien, and this is Taylor.
Hello! This is very fun. I feel like since last week, it looks like your hair color has changed, but you tell me that it has not. I know.
I should dye it purple.
It looks like you have purple streaks, like you're like getting ready to I don't know. Is there somebody that you could what is it called? Like dressing up as the people? Is there somebody with purple hair in this coming show?
No, this isn't Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of fake wigs. I noticed that when rewatching the Lord of the Rings movies. So maybe you're wearing a fake wig for this series.
Yes. I'll never tell.
Yeah. Kaitlyn, I watched The Two Towers. I have less notes than I did on Fellowship of the Ring. I feel like there was a lot more going on in the Fellowship of the Ring, especially connected to the Rings of Power. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going to learn something more today.
Fair, because the Fellowship of the Ring is so much world building and setting the stage, and then Two Towers are just like moving forward with everything.
Yeah, it was very funny. So, we talked in our last video about how I kept meshing things together in my mind, and like part of that's Tolkien's fault. Like he's like Sauron and Saruman and Arwen and Eowyn, and it's very confusing, But it is funny. After watching Two Towers, for some reason, I thought the battle with like the green dead people was this movie, and the battle with all the just humans was the last movie. And so there was I'm watching these 4-hour movies, and I get 3.5 hours in, and I'm like, Aragorn hasn't met the green guy yet.
Right. Like, where's the ghost?
Yeah. I was like, how is I going to finish this off in 30 minutes? I'm like, I mixed these two battles up in my head.
Well, at least you're not reading the Silmarillion, because that's a lot more confusing.
It was very funny because my wife, who has read the Silmarillion, she's also done like the Silmarillion read along with you. She kept coming over and pausing my movie and telling me about it. I was like, leave me alone. This is work for me. I have to watch 12 hours of movies before I talk to Kaitlyn.
Well, this is your idea, so it's really your own fault.
I know it is. She was very excited. She was like...
She's just providing context.
She's like, I'm sure Kaitlyn will tell you this when y'all record, but it was very funny. She's very sweet.
Aw, she's the best. I'm so excited that she's like in our book club and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's really enjoyed it. Okay, let's dive into The Two Towers. So, this is actually interesting because it was a question that I didn't bring up last time just because we went really long last time. But then it was very funny. It was the one question that I wanted to ask you about that was kind of like I had some bones to pick with how the story went. I didn't know if it was the movie or the book or whatever, right? But I had either a bone to pick or questions. And then this movie restarted with the scene that I had questions about, Gandalf dying, So when I watched it in Fellowship of the Ring and then rewatched it here at the beginning of Two Towers, Gandalf is this powerful, powerful wizard. And he's hanging on to like the cliff or whatever after the Balrog, whips him. And I'm like, first of all, physically, why couldn't he have just pulled himself up? Or two, use magic and pull your...
He can't fly. He's not like a superhero.
I know, but he gave up so quickly, and I didn't know why. And so, rewatching it this time, I was like, one, why didn't he just pull himself up off the rock, or at least hang for a little longer so that the other people could come and help pick him up? And then I was like, was he just a tired old man, or was it because he knew he had to go finish off the Balrog?
I think that it's because he knew he had to finish the fight that had been started with the Balrog, because he needed to defeat it, or else it would have just followed the Fellowship, and then it probably would have got the ring. So he had to basically. Also, I think it makes for a better story too, because he had to sacrifice himself for the rest of the Fellowship, and give all of his strength and kind of his life, but he doesn't really die, in order to defeat the Balrog.
Yeah, and I think that made a lot more sense in Two Towers than it did in the Fellowship of the Ring movie. Because
I imagine, yeah, I bet they got feedback on that. Probably.
Oh yeah. So
it's probably
a lot of people like me, like, why didn't he just hang on? Like,
yeah, they're like, okay, we have to put this in the next movie.
It's very fun. It's legitimately what I thought about. I was like, somebody like me 20 years ago probably pointed this out.
Probably.
But yeah, because like at the in Fellowship, how it ends, it just looks like he's giving up. And like I knew that he was going to come back as like Gandalf the White. I was like, was he cheating the system? Like, did he say like, oh, I sacrificed myself? But like watching him fall, and I mean, just the cinematography of like watching him fall after the Balrog was so cool. But
yeah,
like once I saw that him fight it, I was like, oh, this makes way more sense. Like I think he did it. Like he let go on purpose.
Yeah, it's like he knew what was starting to happen and he knew he had to finish it.
Yeah. Okay, my next question. We see Gollum pretty quickly here in the movie. We've been talking about the ages, and you've been teaching me about the ages. So I actually learned at the end of this movie, ironically enough, skipping ahead a bit, like I didn't realize that like the end of this story started the Fourth Age. I had forgotten, or that was the next movie, but the end of the whole story. But we're in the Third Age. And then the Second Age, how long between like the final battle of the Second Age and like where we are now? Do you know?
We are in approximately the 3000th year of the Third Age. I don't have the exact number in my head, but it's something like 3000 years
of the Third Age. So it's been about 3000 years since the second. Okay.
Since the end of the Second Age.
Okay, that helps a lot because my question is like, how long has Gollum been Gollum?
So he got the ring about 500 years ago.
Wow. So he's been alive that long?
Yeah, which is super unnatural for someone like him. And so that's why he's so decrepit and gangly and monstrous.
So it's the ring that's keeping him alive, or was the ring?
Yeah, the ring gives him unnatural long life. Like it says that in the Fellowship prologue.
Gotcha.
And so it's kind of like the same way that it works with the Nazgul, how it gave strength to men, but it also stretched their life and kind of they withered away. But he's kind of doing it in a slightly different way.
Gotcha. And that was the thing. Is like I figured he had been Gollum for a long time, and I knew that the Second Age was a long time ago, but I didn't know how long a long time was. So getting the 500 and 3000, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
So another one of the things that we see is like it's just always cool seeing Aragorn, the human, the elf, and the dwarf fighting together, right? After those people have been fighting for a long time. So in this Rings of Power movie, or in this Rings of Power show in the Second Age, what were the relations like? Do you know, like, were they already fighting? Was this where those things started? Like the elves, the humans, and the dwarves, were they friends in the Second Age? Were they enemies in the Second Age?
So there's always been like a tension between the elves and the dwarves, even since their creation, because the dwarves aren't like official children of Iluvatar. They're like the children of his adoption because they weren't a part of the original plan. And so there's always been a lot of tension between them, but there's always also been a lot of fruit in their relationship. So they'll have like working relationships where they don't fully trust each other, but they can like collaborate and build these massive kingdoms together. So there's a lot of that. I'm not 100% sure how the show will go because they are doing a lot of time compression where they're just smushing all of the Second Age into, I don't know, like 100 years. And so I'm not sure where the dwarves and elves will be at this time, but I know that during the Second Age, there is a lot of friendship between them, but there's also a lot of different falling outs. From what we've seen so far, it seems like there's kind of that similar, like, uneasy friendship that we'll see, but it also seems like they're setting up Durin and Elrond to almost mimic like a Gimli and Legolas kind of relationship. So we'll see.
That'll be fun. Those two together is just they're the comedic relief. It's so much fun together.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Just another. We did one last time, so I had to make one this time. We referenced Star Wars, and I thought it was just very funny. Like Christopher Lee, I looked up the years. Like these had to be around the same year. Christopher Lee was in the second Lord of the Rings movie the same year that he was in the second Star Wars movie, where he played.
He was busy.
Yeah, I know, right? Where he plays, Saruman and Count Dooku. I just thought it was funny because in the second movie, he's building an army, a fake army, of orcs and of clothes.
Right.
It's just so very funny. I think 2002. I was how old was I? Like 14 or something like that, 13 or 14, and it must have just he made a very big impact on my life because my son's name is Christopher Lee Schroll. So playing these. Oh my
gosh,
roles.
I didn't know that was his middle name.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's just.
Well, he's a cool guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he is so cool. It's just kind of funny that I already had that like thought in my head, like connecting him to his star. Like Saruman and Count Dooku are essentially the same person. They played very similar roles.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely very similar. He probably didn't have to do a lot of like work to get into each different character because he was kind of already in that mode.
Right. He's like, when does Yoda fight Saruman? They're like, that was the last week's movie, like.
Yeah, I wonder if he got it like mixed up. I wonder if he had to go back and forth between sets, or if he was able to do one movie, finish it, and then go to the other one. I don't know.
It's just so funny. What a year! The year of Christopher Lee.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. My next question was. There was a reference that like Legolas said it, and I felt like somebody knows more, and I definitely didn't. But when they're walking in the bog and there's all the dead bodies, and they're like, was it? I forget who it was. Was it Legolas or the hobbits? I can't remember. But they're walking.
That's the hobbits with Gollum. Okay. They're following him.
So it was Gollum that said it, not Legolas. And he said this is from a battle long ago. And they're like, so is that a battle that we know about, or is it just some random battle? It just felt very important that they said it. And I was like, I don't know what battle that is.
So I actually had to look that up because I hadn't thought about it in a long time. But that is the people that you see buried there are people who perished in the last alliance against Sauron. So that's the battle that you see at the beginning of the prologue. And that is in the Second Age. So we might actually see, well, I mean, we're going to see the battle, but I don't know if we'll see the creation of the Dead Marshes, because I guess what happened is the people were buried there, but it was already kind of marshy. And so the marsh like swallowed up the graves. And that's why you see them like that. So it's really creepy. But I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny because I think watching it with this like Rings of Power lens, I was like, oh, I think they're referencing back to that battle. I thought they were connected, and I just couldn't figure out if it really was. So I'm glad I was right. I can't believe I was right about something.
Yeah, good job.
Hooray!
Yay, 1 point for Taylor.
Yeah, and 1,000 for you. Another timeline thing, right? So we see the Ents, the awakened alive trees. It's funny, but we've been watching. We just watched the I Am Groot shorts on Disney Plus with my kids, and it's just very funny. It's like, oh, like that's where Marvel got Groot from, was these Ents.
Yeah, my kids, whenever they see Groot, they're like, it's Treebeard. No,
it's very funny. It is cool going back to Tolkien and seeing like all these themes and kind of characters from some of my favorite stories that I am really involved with, and going back to some of the original stuff with Tolkien. I'm like, oh, that's where they got that. That's where they stole that. That's where they got that.
Right. Yeah, he's like the father of all good stories.
Right. So when did the elves wake the trees? Like, was that Second Age, or was before? Because like they said it's been a very long time and they're very old, but yeah.
So this kind of seems more like a movie thing, because the Ents are made by Yavanna, who is one of the Valar, which are like the angelic beings. Gotcha. And like way back in the beginning of the Silmarillion is when we hear about their creation, and it doesn't exactly say like when they wake up, but I know that they were created like before the sun and moon. So they've been around for a really, really long time.
I gotcha. Okay. One of my notes was just like Gollum saved Frodo. Like that whole thing was just very weird, watching him go back and forth between like wanting to protect Frodo as the person holding the ring, and then just, on a dime later on, just like going back and forth, like, I want to kill him. No, I must save him.
Yeah. He's like, well, I'm bound to him, and I swore on the precious, but if I take the precious, I won't be bound to him anymore. So he's like, which one should I do?
Yeah.
But he definitely can't like lose him because he has the ring with him. So he's obsessed with the ring. So he has to keep track of Frodo for sure.
So going back to the question about him being alive for a long time, how is he staying alive when he doesn't have the ring?
Well, the ring is still in existence, so its power is still working, but he's also like withering away at a pretty rapid speed compared to how he was doing when he did have the ring. But he's kind of like a tormented soul at this point where he's like obsessed with the ring and he's trying to get it back at all costs, because I feel like it's almost like you could say he's like a servant of Sauron, not by choice, but because of the ring. And so he's doing Sauron's work in trying to get the ring back. So he's like fueled by that, I guess, and fueled by his obsession and need for it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's right. You had told me like the Nazgul, like they don't have a ring still, but they're, still powered by the ring.
I think, yeah, I'm not sure if they still have their rings because they were given the 9 rings.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So they don't have the 1 ring though.
Right. Speaking of people that are confused by what they are, Gandalf. One of the best lines in the movie is when Gandalf returns. It's like Gandalf the White, Gandalf the Gray. He says 2 things. One that I was like, oh, this is actually a really cool line. And one that was a pretty silly line. The silly line was like, I used to be Gandalf, and now I am Gandalf. I'm like, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah, classic old guy trying to say stuff.
Yeah. So you just think he's like old, confused guy? There's not really an explanation for why he says that.
No. So what happened was his spirit left his body because we know he's immortal, and he went back to the Undying Lands, and his task was to help defeat Sauron. And because he had stayed true to his task and he had shown a lot of commitment, they were like, well, sorry, you have to go back and finish the job. So they send him back to Middle Earth. But he is able to like reveal more of his true power, whereas before he was kind of cloaked and unassuming. And so he comes back as Gandalf the White with like more of his power revealed, I guess. So he's like, well, I was Gandalf. I still am Gandalf, but Gandalf is different now.
It was just such a silly way to say that.
Yeah.
It cracked me up. I'm like, well, bro, this guy, he was making this great speech, and then he's just like, it was like a football coach saying, like, if we want to win, we need to score more points than the other team. We're like, yeah, we know. Like,
yeah,
quite the speech.
Yeah.
But the line that I really liked from it, and I'm not sure why, because I didn't fully understand it, but when he comes back as Gandalf the White, he says, I'm Saruman as he should have been. It's not like, oh, like the way that he worded it, I am Sauron as he should have been. Like, what is the meaning there?
Well, he's saying, like, so he and Saruman were both sent to Middle Earth with the same task of basically bringing down Sauron. But Saruman, as we saw in the first movie, he becomes swayed by the idea of the power. And so now Gandalf is like basically, so Saruman was always more prominent and maybe more powerful. He was more highly respected than Gandalf. And so after Saruman basically fell, now Gandalf is kind of like, well, I am picking up the role of Saruman within myself.
I got you.
So he's like, he's the head of the mission now.
It was such a cool line, and then he ruined it, being like, I am Saruman, but I'm also Gandalf and Gandalf. I'm like, okay, right. It was great, but
and they're like, we thought you were Saruman, and he's like, I am, but I'm also Gandalf.
You strange old man.
They're like, okay, Grandpa.
It was pretty funny. It was like I went back and forth between like, oh, this is great, to like, what are you talking about, to this is great, to what are you talking about, man? It's very funny. My next question, Sauron, who essentially, like our Satan figure, right? I don't understand why he's so afraid of Aragorn. Like, is it just because he knows that he can talk to green people? Like, why is he so afraid of Aragorn?
Well, okay. So you remember back in the prologue, the guy who cuts the ring from Sauron's finger?
Yeah.
That's Isildur. And Aragorn is like the last remaining heir of Isildur. And so he has the same blood. And it's kind of like in this bloodline, there's a power over Sauron, especially. So like, I think, first of all, it like triggers Sauron to be like, oh, this is the guy, like this is the descendant of the guy who cut my
He cut off my finger. Wah!
Right. Yeah. So he's like, ugh, I don't like this guy. But at the same time, he's the heir to the throne of Gondor, and he's a Númenórean. So he has more power, and he out of any like man, he has the most potential to rally all of the races of Middle Earth against Sauron, and he also has a lot of his own strength, I think, because of his heritage. So he's like if there was anyone who had the strength and power and the right to challenge Sauron, it would be one of the heirs of Isildur. And so Sauron didn't really realize that there were any heirs left because they had kept him hidden. And so like realizing this just like shakes him to his core. Basically, he's like, oh, like you think you're good. You think you don't really have anyone who can stand up against you. And then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, like this guy could. So it causes Sauron to doubt.
So I guess because Sauron knew that he was powerful enough to take on everybody individually, but if they all got together under the banner of Aragorn, it would be more difficult.
Right. And Sauron hasn't really considered the idea that anyone would want to destroy the ring. So he's kind of thinking if anyone were to try to wield the ring, if Aragorn were to try to wield it, he might stand a chance against Sauron. Like he might have the strength to hold it against him, whereas anyone else wouldn't. So he's like freaked out because he doesn't know what's going on. And he doesn't know that they're going to try to destroy the ring. Like in his pride, he would think that no one would ever want to destroy it because it's so great. That
goes back to our conversation last week about the Fellowship of the Ring and like that big moment of Aragorn giving the ring back to Frodo. I didn't realize that that there was a chance that he could have worn it. I just assumed it would have been like anybody else, that he would have gotten crazy and weak or whatever. But you're saying he had a chance.
It might have been. Yeah. I mean, because the original Nazgul were like lords of the 3 of them were lords of Númenor too. So we saw what happened to them. But I think there's like, I don't know if it's like a true possibility, but in Sauron's mind, there's a possibility that he would try to wield it against him.
Gotcha. That's cool. I like that whole thing.
Yeah.
Good. Continuing on with Aragorn, the Dunedain. I'm not sure what that means. I didn't realize he was 87 years old. He looks 40 because the actor's 40. And I know that he knows Elvish and he was like raised by elves, So what is the Dunedain? Is he half elf, half human? Like what's so special about the Dunedain?
So the Dunedain are just the men of Númenórean blood, and there's not very many of them left. So the Dunedain it's just like another name for them. But Númenóreans were given a longer life than other men as a gift from the Valar at the beginning of the Second Age. And the Númenórean kings are all descendants from Elros, who is the twin brother of Elrond. So, Elrond. So way, way long time ago, Elrond's parents were given the choice between immortality and mortality, and they chose immortality, and so did Elrond. But Elros, his brother, chose mortality, but he still lived about 500 years.
Oh, no way.
The people of Númenórean race and descendants, they just live a lot longer as one of their like gifts from the Valar.
That's really interesting because we see Elrond grappling with his daughter's choice to become mortal or not. It's like that. There's a lot of heart to this, right? Like he lost his brother and all of that line. That adds so much more weight to his like, being a father and kind of trying to coerce his daughter into, or not coerce, that sounds bad, but like convince his daughter to stay.
Because he saw his brother die, and his mom and dad, they're not dead, but he can't. They're like, they're gone. His dad is a star and his mom is a bird.
Oh, obviously, I knew that. Obviously. I would have guessed that immediately, Kaitlyn. Both of those immediately. It makes so much sense. We're not going to go down there because I'll get very confused.
Yeah, that's first age.
Yeah. Last question along the lines of the elves and Aragorn, and then one silly question.
Okay.
So the Undying Lands, I'm confused about what it is. It seems like they're just giving up and dying, or are they actually going somewhere else and staying alive? I'm confused by what these Undying Lands are.
Okay, so the Undying Lands are, it's a place called Aman, and this is the Blessed Realm. So back at the beginning, it was connected to the world, and you could go back and forth between Middle Earth and Aman. But at the end of the Second Age, the Blessed Realm is like removed from the earth, so you can't really get to it other than like a special route that nobody really knows except for these people with the ships. So it's not that the land itself makes you undying, but it's that is where the undying can go to, because the elves are immortal. And that's where the Valar live as well, the like angelic god beings. And so for the elves, they can return to Valinor at like an appointed time. Like they can't just be like, well, I'm out. I don't really feel like dealing with this. It's usually like, it kind of seems like it's on a case-to-case basis. Like, all right, it's my time to go back now. So they get to go back there and live in relative peace, and there's like healing, and it's kind of like a heavenly place.
It seemed like what you said they weren't doing. It felt like they were like, this place is screwed. See ya.
Well, I think a lot of them. So like, I think a lot of them were like, well, I'm out. Like it's a little fuzzy how they get to decide when to leave, because sometimes they're bound by certain things that keep them in Middle Earth, and then sometimes others are more free to go.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on like their spot and their vocation, I guess, and like, what's going on with them and their realm and all of that.
Yeah. Either way, I was very happy with the elves who stayed, because I was like, I like these elves. They didn't give up. That one elf that looks like Sacha Baron Cohen that came to fight with everybody, that was awesome.
I can't even.
My wife hated that. Like the leader of the elves that came to fight with them at the end of this one.
I can't even remember. Now I'm just imagining.
I'll send you a picture. Okay. And all I can think was, wow, wow, wee, wow.
Oh my gosh.
It was very funny.
Oh, no.
He looks exactly like him. I was like, it looks like Sacha Baron Cohen in a serious role. It was very funny. I'll put up a picture on YouTube so people will know what I'm talking about.
Oh my gosh.
All right, that was a silly end to a serious question. But okay, last semi-silly question. Where'd the Ent wives go? I'm very sad for the Ents that they don't have wives. What happened to them?
Good answer for that. All we know is that they're lost.
Oh.
It's kind of like they just went somewhere, and we don't really know. I'm not sure if maybe in like Tolkien's drafts he gives more of an answer, but this is kind of one of those unanswered questions. It's like they're just lost, and it's really sad.
So the next show we need on Amazon is Real Ent Wives of Middle Earth, is what you're telling me.
I'm pretty sure. So one thing that happened at Comic-Con when we went to the Rings of Power panel, someone went up and asked, are we going to see the Ent Wives? And their answer was, maybe you've already seen one. So that kind of implies that maybe there was one in one of the trailers or something that we saw. So that was kind of exciting, because we've only seen Ents on film so far.
Oh, that'd be cool. That big tree in the trailer, it just starts walking and talking. Hello.
Yeah. Right. And they're like, what is she like, wearing lipstick and carrying a purse? Like, I don't know how you tell the difference between an Ent and an Ent wife. Like, they just look like trees.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask any follow-up questions. So I have a ton more questions about Aragorn, but we'll get to those in next week's video, The Return of the King. So we only have one more of these next week where we will be talking about Return of the King. I have a ton of questions. Full disclosure, I've already watched it, and I can't wait to talk to you about this.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Cool. Well, you guys hit subscribe. We'd love for you to stay with us. We only have 2 weeks until Rings of Power comes out and one more video from us. So hit subscribe button. Make sure you like, comment below what you think we missed from Two Towers. Before I do that, I forgot to ask you, Kaitlyn, was there anything that I missed from Two Towers that you think is important?
Oh, man. No, I feel like The Two Towers is the most straightforward out of all of the movies. So, it's one of the movies where you're able to watch. They did change a lot of things in The Two Towers compared to the books. They did kind of screw up Faramir, and that does not make me happy. But otherwise, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah. Oh, the amount of times I think Faramir is dead throughout this series is unbelievable. All right, cool. Well, yeah, you guys hit subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments. We will be back 1 week from today as we await the return of the king. Thanks for watching.